We discuss not only do children need healthy peers to recover from substance use disorder or any kind of destructive behavior, but they also need a healthy family environment and dynamics. So this speakers meeting is going to have a lot of PDR, Parent Driven Recovery tools from this dynamic husband and wife team, Kiernan and Jackie. I know you'll be amazed as they share how hard they work together, how they stuck with a plan and walked through some really difficult times. I know we talk a lot about the children having healthy, sober peers, but parents need healthy, sober peers too. And Jackie and Kiernan have been those peers for me. They've given me a lot of love and encouragement, given me really good feedback, and called me out on my bullshit when I needed to be called out on it in a kind, gentle way. When
Thanks,
I,
Aubrey.
when I like was talking too much or too much in my head, I can remember Kiernan especially. I was parent coordinator for Cornerstone, and he was like the assistant, which didn't make sense. He probably should have been the main coordinator. But when I was going overboard, he just kind of give me this look or go like this with his finger, like, wrap it up, Aubrey, you're too much in your head. And that helped me a lot. It really did help me stay focused, because I tend to go down tangents a lot. So just that's an example of what we need in healthy, sober peers, to be honest like that. I am so glad they're here. I truly love them. I know I can call them anytime I need to call them for love and support or honesty. So welcome, Kiernan and Jackie. Thank you this is your first time sharing your testimonies. So this is really special. So thank you for choosing the Every Brain Matters community to do this. And I will turn the floor over to you. We'll do the experience, strength, and hope, and then we'll open it up for Q&A after. So thank you for being here.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Kiernan.
Kiernan.
And it's my wife, Jackie. I'll do probably a little bit more of the talking, but that doesn't mean I'm the strong person here. My wife is the real rock star. And this kind of reminds me of our very first Cornerstone meeting, which was like Saturday, September 22nd, I think, in 2019, where we just walked in with absolutely no idea what was about to happen. And then we just trusted, and, we just turned ourselves over to the group. Well, not initially at first. Some of us had some reluctance. It was a little, now I'm a little more comfortable being like, I don't get freaked out. Like, I can just go with the flow. Whereas back then, it was easy to get freaked out. So what we're going to try to do is, I know all of you have your own stories and you're living through a lot. And the key here, like Aubrey said, is to find connection with people who understand what you're going through and aren't going to judge you, and can give you some strength and some tools to help you get your serenity back. And so I'll tell you a little bit about our story to give you a sense of, the scope of kind of what we've been through the last 3 years, and some of the things that we do now to stay strong, and kind of some of the takeaways maybe of, what we've learned in the last 3 years. It's only going to be a drop in the bucket, because these have been very transformative years. And hopefully we'll leave plenty of time for like questions. And so our son is who brought us into recovery. He's our oldest child. He has 3 younger sisters, so we have 4 children. We're like an intact family, so these are all our kids, and we've been married for 21 years. So our family life has been pretty stable. We do live in Houston, and we homeschooled our kids for most of their childhood, growing up, elementary school. And our son was a good kid, very bright, and we noticed changes starting maybe 8th grade. And most of the time it just seemed to us this was kind of like normal changes. And then we kept wondering, like, is this really normal? Just his who he was hanging out with, his attitude at home, his sleeping patterns, I mean, you name it. But we had no idea that he was involved in drugs really at all. I mean, we had at some point about a year before we really uncovered, a relative brought to our attention that they thought maybe he was involved in this, and we ended up testing him. More often than not, my son passes his tests, which is another problem when you learn like the drug test is not a panacea. But in any event, as he was beginning his 11th grade in September 2019, so he's 16 years old, we had an episode that really raised the alarm in his behavior. He ran off. He was gone a couple of days. We tracked him down. We picked him up. So I gave him a drug test and he failed it. And I really believe in that moment, he could have talked me he could have told me, I've never done this before. I'm really sorry. I'll never do it again. And I would have believed him. But instead, he looked at me and he said, "Dad, I've been doing drugs for a long time and I really want to stop." So we knew we had a serious problem. So at that point, I was unemployed, and I was unsuccessfully looking for a job, just to kind of add to like the intensity of the crisis. I didn't have health insurance, so I thought, what am I going to do? I knew like drug treatment was not cheap. Long story short, within a matter of days, we were told that we qualified for state covered care. And we were given some options for treatment facilities. There was one close to us, and it seemed to be a good fit. We were told he was eligible for 90 days. And we dropped him off, and we thought, great, we solved that problem. We're going to pick him up in 3 months, and then we can get back to normal. 6 days later, it was 4:30 in the morning. This treatment center was about 15, 16 miles away in the southwest part of Houston, so through some really rough neighborhoods. So at 4:30 in the morning, our doorbell rang, and it was our son. And he had climbed the 12-foot wall and walked home in the middle of the night, and he was out of his mind. He was not going to go back to that place no matter what. And I was so scared. I had to like crawl into bed with him to get him to calm down and go to sleep like I used to do when he was a little kid. And he finally fell asleep, and I spent the whole night praying. I'm Catholic. I prayed about 50 rosaries, about 250 memories, just nonstop. And I was praying for him to go back to this place, and I couldn't get him to go back. About a couple of days after that, we got in touch with Cornerstone, which is how I met Aubrey, and didn't realize it was a mile from our house. And I talked to the head counselor, a guy named Kirk. And Kirk explained to me that treatment for drugs was the only like health problem that the treatment had gotten worse in the last 20 years. And so anyway, so we got involved in Cornerstone, and it was totally different. Maybe some of you have heard or been involved, but for those of you who are not aware, it's called Parent Driven Recovery, and it's also what we call an alternative peer group. So what that means is you really got to really your kids have to be surrounded by other people who are looking for sobriety and can call them out on their BS. They're working a plan, and parents need the same thing. We need to work our own recovery plan for codependency. I'd never heard the word codependency before. So we got him going. We got him in, like the first day we went in for a counseling session with Joe. We walked downstairs and there were like two other dudes there that were Patrick's age, and they said, "Hey, we're having like guys' night tonight. You want to come?" And we're like, "Take them." So these two like really kind of questionable looking teenagers took my boy away from me, and he spent the night, and we saw him the next morning when we had our first meeting. And that was a wake-up call when we went into a 12-step meeting full of parents with teenagers with drug problems. And it was really weird because everyone was saying that they loved me, and that was really awkward. They were all like hugging and talking about their problems out in the open. And so I'm going to pause and kind of like, my wife just has a great story about her reaction to that first meeting. So I'll let you jump in here.
My reaction was nothing like his. He sat there and he was ready to open up and share and I guess maybe be loved on. And I thought, there is no way in hell these people are going to be my new friends. I know I need some support or some help, but these are not going to be my friends. And I left. I walked out of the meeting and I went around the corner and just stood in a little hallway. And I hadn't cursed. I mean, I don't remember the last time I cursed. Recovery definitely brought that on. So I started cursing. I was by myself and I was really angry and hurt, and I was pissed. I was going through a roller coaster of emotions. And I saw my reflection in the glass, and I saw how absolutely ugly I was at that moment and how pissed off I was. And then I got really scared because I was like scared of myself. I was scared of the feelings I was having. And I realized that I needed to get it together, because at that moment, I just wanted to save my son. I really didn't I guess at that moment, I didn't give a crap about myself. I just wanted to help him. And I really wanted that, we're just going to fix him and this will all be like in the movies. We'll be done with this and life will continue. So I walked back into the room and sat down and just listened. I cried through the whole thing. I mean, I didn't cry. He cried. I was angry. I don't know what I was feeling. I was also a little detached, an unhealthy kind of detachment. And I wasn't willing at that moment, but I wanted to, maybe I was a little bit. I went back and forth, which I'm sure a lot of you probably have felt that way before. I wasn't really sure of what was happening, but I knew that something was about to happen. I wasn't happy about it, but I was going to maybe give it a little bit of a try because I wanted wholeheartely to help my son. So that's why I stayed. And I remember hearing someone in the meeting share, and her son he's just sounded like an absolute nightmare. So I remember picking a sponsor. It took maybe a week to pick a sponsor. And I thought, I'm going to pick that person because she sounds like she's got a really tough kid and he might actually sound tougher than mine. So maybe that should be my sponsor. So that's how I chose her.
So a couple of things. One is, my wife Jackie just mentioned feelings, either anger or crying. And this was a little bit further down the road, but it's really important to learn a healthy way to process your feelings. And part of that is learning to be vulnerable. And you need a safe space and a safe environment in which to be vulnerable, because they're just feelings. and you got to learn to process and get those feelings out. So, getting angry in a healthy way instead of repressing it, crying, all that stuff. So, but I want to go back to that first Saturday, because this is Saturday morning, 10:30 in the morning till almost noon. And then in less than like 10 hours, my wife and I had a complete enlightening experience about the power of Cornerstone. So I want you to tell that story.
About in the car?
No, when he was spiraling down in the bedroom, and then you texted Joe, and
That was incredible. Yeah. So we had unfortunately had gone to this meeting, and we still thought things could be normal. So we allowed him to go hang out with an old friend, and in just a matter of hours, he had changed his whole attitude about wanting help or doing anything that had to do with recovery. So he started acting out. Like I said, at this point, we knew that there was a problem. So he was no longer hiding it. So he was just being he was just terrorizing us. So he decided he wasn't going to go to the meeting or a function. He wasn't going to do anything. He was just going to do whatever he wanted to do. And, there was no changing his mind. We weren't going to get physical with him. So I remember texting Joe and letting him know that we didn't know what to do. He wasn't going to get up. He wasn't going to do anything. And we were, we're just like scared, just standing around in our own house.
held hostage
in our own home. And, this is all happening kind of quiet like. So our daughters didn't know that anything, that anything was going on, anything this extreme was going on. So we're just holding it all in at this point. They just might see us crying once in a while, but there's no yelling or big drama. And I texted him and he replied, what's your address? And I was like, what? I just sent him the address, and he said, I'm going to get some guys over there. Three guys are on their way. And I just thought, to do what? What are other teenagers going to come to our house? What are they going to do that we can't do? Like, what is he talking about? That's just impossible. So these kids showed up. One of them didn't have shoes on. One of them had long hair. They were just like, the kind of kids that you really don't want your kids hanging out with showed up at our house. The only difference was that they were just vulnerable, loving, I don't know, open.
They had tools.
They had tools that we didn't have. They had something that we did not have. And you could recognize it because they were so cool and, and they're not on drugs and they're behaving this way. They're just being polite. So they walk right into his room, and within 5 minutes, Patrick was like, all right, going to a meeting, love you guys. And he walks out the door with these guys. And my husband and I literally stood in the living room. We're in a townhouse. So we were on the second floor looking down by, and we looked at each other and thought, what the hell was that? What just happened? And I was like, for that, in that moment, I realized what I needed. And it was the love and the connection in that group. There was something that was happening in that group that I didn't know or have. And, I thought I was religious. I thought that I knew how to pray. I thought, I knew it all. I learned a whole other layer of love and compassion from people that were complete strangers. And they were teens. It blew me away. I understood why everything each other, and I didn't understand it before, but at that moment I felt the love, and we literally just stood in the living room crying, like holding each other and just crying like, oh my God, we need to embrace what's happening here. We need to embrace the support, and we need to get it together and learn and read and just get as much knowledge from these people as we can. We need to learn, how do we get what they have?
Yeah. So, just that first week, we put Patrick in a program called Outpatient. So he was no longer in high school. So he was going to group therapy 4 days a week. And then there was these aftercare programs. So essentially it was 24/7 of Cornerstone Recovery for my son. And we still don't have any tools yet. And he was still living at home. But I did have I was given a phone number to a dad. I had never met him, but I was told if I need to talk to somebody, call this guy. So I started calling this guy. His name's David, and he's still a good friend to this day. And he just talked me off the cliff like every day. And he sounded like he knew what the hell he was talking about. Like he understood exactly what I was going through, and he could share what he'd been through with his kid. And one of the first things he told me is, no is a complete sentence. And once you tell your kid a message, a delivery message, walk away. And so we got to practice that because, again, like within a day, my son didn't want to go to something, and so we gave him the message, and then I walked upstairs to the bedroom, and Jackie stayed downstairs and was still like engaging. Later on, we learned this acronym that we used called JADing: justify, argue, defend, explain. Don't ever jade with your kids. But literally, I pulled her out of the living room, went upstairs, and I shut the bedroom door. And, it was like taking oxygen out of a fire, and then it just deflated the whole situation. So within a week, it was clear that it was not ideal to have my son at home. And, I recognize this isn't always an option for everybody where they are, but at Cornerstone, we have this option to host, which means he could go live with, actually went and lived with Nick, a host family that was further along than we are. And it turned out that the dad was I had picked as my sponsor. So he went and lived with his family. So it was great because it gave us room. So that was end of September, 2019. So it gave Jackie and I some room to breathe and focus on our own recovery, because we started to realize very quickly we needed to work on ourselves. Because at the end of the day, you don't know what's going to happen with your kid. They may get healthy, they may not. They're most likely, most of the time, they're going to relapse several times. Like, it's part of recovery. So understanding that, and understanding that the extended family isn't in recovery, like the only real thing you can do is focus on yourself, because the second step says, realize that a power higher than us could restore us to sanity. It doesn't say could fix our kids. It doesn't say make us happy. It says could restore us to sanity. Sent my son to a host home. And that was great. And he did that for 3.5 weeks. And then one morning at like 7 a.m, I got a call from my sponsor, and he said, your son walked out this morning at about 4:30, and he's gone. He took a garbage bag, and I think he had like $40 cash. And this is in Houston. Now, I had already at that point, like a month into recovery, read books and heard stories of kids running away. And so we had kind of been through like a fire drill, if you will, of what to do. And I just was hoping it was never going to happen to me. And I also was told, like, most of the time they turn back up within a day or two. That's like pretty much most of the time. Well, my son didn't turn up. We were looking for him everywhere. We reported him missing to the police. Followed like the trail of friends that we knew he had connected with that had helped him run away, leave. And they claimed they didn't know where he was, that he had left, and which we didn't believe. And then like a week went by, and there was still we hadn't found him at all. So we're getting a little bit worried. And then like another week went by, and then another week. And so it started to get to the point where he was really gone. We had no trace whatsoever. So what do we do? The police were not helpful. He couldn't be found anywhere. It was scary. And what was really intense was realizing that we still had to move on with our life, like with or without our son. We had 3 girls and each other. And so what we chose to do was to dig in. We never missed a meeting. So in our program, there's the kind of the climbers meetings, which is similar to, if any of you are on the Wednesday night meeting with Aubrey, back and forth conversation. We call that the Thursday meeting for parents, the Saturday meeting for parents. We had coffee after Thursday meeting with teens, lunch after Saturday meetings with parents, talked to our sponsors every day, started doing our step. And it was a function. It was after a Thursday night meeting where we went to someone's house and they had coffee and the teens and the parents were together. And I had a one-on-one with one of the teenagers. Great kid that I love to this day. And he started to break down because my son was missing. Now, he'd only known my son for a month. And what I realized in that moment was I didn't have a monopoly on my suffering. And I needed to stop being selfish about my pain. That my pain was serving a purpose for others. And it was helping these kids get sober and learn how to live their life with integrity and learn how to connect. And I also realized that they were being given to me by God as a source of healing. And so that, as it turned out, my son was gone for 7 weeks, which is like an eternity. It's almost unprecedented for a 16-year-old. It turned out he was literally homeless. Like he just was choosing to live on the street. So he's a tough kid. I mean, he can, at 16, he was surviving on the street. But during that whole 7 weeks, we got really strong and we connected the other parents, but also the other teens. I had so many one-on-one conversations with so many kids and parents. And I kept hearing, the same message of strength and hope and experience. And, when you have pain, you have to process it. And this was the structure I needed to force me to keep processing my pain, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to function. And meanwhile, I was still unemployed and I still couldn't even get an interview. And I didn't know how we were going to survive. So let me keep going, just kind of give you an idea. December 8th, Sunday night. Oh, the day before, they had this function. It's called, it's a scavenger hunt. So this is like the greatest event in the history of the world.
The teens have this.
The teens spend all day filming themselves doing really stupid stuff all over the city. And then they all get together at night, and the parents and the counselors get to judge these videos. So I got picked to be a judge. So I went down to our friend's house in Sugar Land. And but during the day, they'd been at this giant mall called the Galleria. It's like huge mall in Houston. And 2 girls had spotted my son. He had dyed his hair. He had long hair and he dyed it like bleach blonde, but they spotted him. And it was definitely him. And he ran away, but they knew he was alive. And then that night we went down and we were judging this contest, and I was just at peace. I laughed so hard. I took my daughter, who's painfully shy, and I just dropped her in the living room with a bunch of drug addicted teenagers and left her, and went into this room with the other parents to judge these videos. And it was just a blast. And I got completely out of myself. I'd also started bike riding. She and I had started going to this yoga class that they have for Cornerstone, and just all those opportunities to just connect and to get out of your head. And so I realized fun was a job. Fun was not a luxury. fun was a responsibility. And that sounds crazy, but in this moment in your suffering, you got to go out there and have fun, healthy fun, but you got to connect with other people and just be crazy. And that's what I learned from Cornerstone. It is essential to your recovery to get out of the house and go have a lot of fun without drinking. And by the way, I'd also stopped drinking. And it's been 3 years this month since I've had a drink. I don't consider myself an alcoholic, but I feel good. So the wife at this function told me, I think your son's just going to show up and because sometimes when runaways, they'll call you. She said, I think he's just going to show up and ring the doorbell. And I'm like, oh, don't tell me that. Cause I've been through that before. I didn't want that to happen. I want to know when he's coming. But sure enough, the very next night at 9:30 at night, the doorbell rang and we ran down and there he was. Now we had rehearsed this for weeks with Joe's help, our counselor. He came into the house. He was out of his head. He was high. He was 137 pounds. So he's 6'1". So he'd lost a lot of weight. He just looked like crap. And he was talking more crap. Well, we were ready. And at that point, he didn't even spend an hour in our house. We got on while my wife cooked him burgers and was distracting him with talking. I was texting. And so I got my squad on alert, ready to go 24/7, including teens. And within 20 minutes, 2 teens showed up just to hold the fort down and stabilize him. And then the backup team came with we had already had his bag packed and his paperwork filled out for this place called Sundown in Canton, Texas. And it's like a 4.5-hour drive. And so within an hour, we were on the road, myself, 2 teenagers, and my son, and we drove to rehab, and he was mouthing off the whole time in the back, and we got him dropped off. We just got there at 3 a.m. We slept in the parking lot. We went in at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. He passed his drug test. He'd been gone 7 weeks and he still passed a drug test. I learned this because he had no body fat, because it was just a urine test, in case you guys are wondering. And he's like, so you're going to pick me up tomorrow, right? Because I passed my test. And I'm like, okay, yeah. 71 days later, he came out. We picked him up with a bunch of teens, went back into Cornerstone, went back into outpatient. Then it was 2 weeks later, I had to take him to the ER for cutting his thigh, had 12 stitches, spent the night. So that was 2020. So I guess now he's doing well. So he's sober. He's a great brother. He's working. He's connected. He has a sponsor that he's kept. Now he had the sponsor kind of off and on while he was in Cornerstone, and now he continues to have this guy that we've known, whose parents are active, and he trusts this friend of his to be his sponsor. And so he works a program, and he's like getting into physics on YouTube, and he's like sharing what he's learned about, the bend in the universe, and we're looking at him. He's like, well, my brain's functioning because I'm not smoking weed all the time. It's just great to do that. He's spiritually connected. He's physically healthy.
He's not the same person he was.
Yeah. Because I want to make sure we have time for Q&A. So Jackie and I have continued to work a program. We still have the same sponsors, still read our meditations, still go to weekly meetings, still get involved in the group. I'm going to be leading a step study program, 3rd year in a row, doing that, going on bike trips. I'll be going to Sun Valley, Idaho. Someone here is from Mary. I think you're from Idaho. So I'm going to be seeing Barbara in a couple weeks. And it's just become how we stay strong. And we still set boundaries. We still call shots, which some of you may know what that means, but we still hold our kids accountable. And my son knows, living at home is a privilege. And, that if he screws up, he knows what will happen. We will kick him out. And he likes knowing that we're in charge, we set the rules, and we will enforce them. So
I think my take, well, what I've learned is that I had to work on myself more than I knew initially. I wanted to save his life and I wanted to help him because that's what moms do, right? We're very codependent, and I want to make that I needed to help myself before I could help anybody else, because I literally wanted to run away too while he was gone. Like, I did not want to be here. Everything that I thought was true was in the toilet, and I could have allowed those thoughts in my head to just remain there. But instead, I learned from all the other strong people, in my group, in my support group, that I needed to get out of my head and try to work on myself and learn and have fun, and life goes on, and be ready to hit pavement running when he comes home. And he did. And I would have been happy just going to church on Sunday and cooking dinner. And then 5 days later, he would have probably left and done this. It would have been like a roller coaster, but we had to do something different, and we had to trust in the process. And that was really, really hard to do. Because that's not how we're wired, right? To do those types of things.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's very uncomfortable.
I think one other thing and then maybe we'll open it up for questions is, and Jackie's been much more, I don't want to say successful, but like has done an amazing job is sponsoring other parents and working with other parents, being of service. That's probably been the best thing for our recovery is, and like Aubrey says, like she'll let me know, hey, there's a parent somewhere that, can you talk to them? Can you give them a call? And I love doing that because it helps me so much, and hopefully it helps them too. But we really value any chance we can to be of service to others, and it is extremely beneficial to us. And it reminds us all the time, like, you don't want to isolate. Like, that isolation is a death toll. You got to find people to connect with. You got to have a support group. You got to like show up regularly for your meetings, and you got to make this a priority. If your kid had brain cancer or a heart condition, you do everything you can to be at the hospital and get them the treatment that they needed. This is life and death. And so you kind of have to have the same mentality. So Aubrey, I guess we can just, anybody I'm sure wants to ask questions, however you want to do it, if they just want to speak up or.
Yeah, thank you, Kiernan and Jackie. That was powerful and inspiring, and just everything recovery is about. So thank you for sharing that. And yes, we can open it up for questions now. You guys can unmute and ask the question yourself. You can put it in the chat, however you're comfortable. Kiernan and Jackie have a wealth of information and experience, so I definitely encourage you to even ask those tough questions that maybe you're thinking about.
And I can see that you all have gained a lot. And I guess the fact that you have each other has been, it didn't blow you apart, which sometimes this does. And I think that that's really helpful. I was a single mother, and my son ran away several times. He disappeared in the middle of the night, and I didn't have the support you all have. So you're very lucky. I think structure is really important to surviving. However you get structure and support and peace and quiet, as in church or saying rosaries, is really helpful.
Yep. Thank you.
It was, thank you so much for the compliments. And, there's what I learned in being in a support group or joining meetings like this one is that you also see God's love in others, and we have it here. I'm not trying to sound like weird or cringy, but it's still love and connection right here. And every time, I shared my pain or I heard someone else's, I learned something new, and you gain so much strength from that. So there's a lot of love here too.
I have a question. I guess it's kind of to the whole group. This is Jackie. We're in a situation where our son's in recovery. We're in a smaller town, and I don't know how much of an issue you all have run up against. It's just marijuana, it's just weed, and in the recovery community even. But our biggest struggle with our son right now, and he's been clean, we think, for about 6 months on round 3 of cannabis-induced psychosis. And I think he finally recognizes that was the trigger, although he also probably clearly has mental health issues that are being treated. But he has a great therapist, but he has no clean peers. And I don't know if any of you have suggestions, just how to find him a group, being from a small town, and if there's something online that I don't even know if I could get him to participate, but that's kind of our struggle right now. Is he's feeling, I think, pretty isolated. He's working and trying to go back to school, but he really doesn't have any peers that are clean or friends that are clean right now, and that's a real problem.
You're right. I mean, okay. So, I agree. Like, where you are, we're lucky to be in Houston. And it can be a struggle with these states that have legalized marijuana. It's a struggle, like you said, when they don't have a healthy peer group. But there's always one next thing that you can do. So don't always work on yourself and work on hope. Developing hope in yourself. So keep that focus. But there could be an AA group. So our kids, when they were active in Cornerstone, they were going to grown-ups. And a lot of those, like, they've actually done like really good things. Some of those guys come around to our golf events. So there's AAs everywhere, and sobriety and 12 steps are the same everywhere. And if he's 17, at 16, 17, my son was going to AA meetings. Like the Cornerstone was like two days a week, but the other 5 days a week he was going to AA meetings. So yeah,
Sponsor.
And work with a sponsor. Yeah.
Does he have a sponsor? Or
He doesn't. He has a therapist that's been really, really helpful, but now she's a woman who's not my age, but she's a therapist. So he has a great connection with her, but now he's thinking, oh, I'm better. He just really needs peers. And that's what's so tough. Clean peers, healthy peers, and
Go to AA and get,
Jackie?
get a sponsor. And I would insist, like, you got to go to AA and you got to get a sponsor.
yeah, I think that's
It's
a good
great that
idea.
he has a good therapist. I mean, that's awesome.
Are
But
you-
therapy is not recovery. Therapy is treatment.
Right.
here it's not legal yet, but we could walk outside of our house and there might be somebody
They don't
smoking
enforce
weed.
it.
My son might go out to walk the dog and there's going to be teenagers offering him stuff. So moving or it's not going to matter. It's going to follow us everywhere.
Everywhere.
It's just, if he's living in your home, then you can set the guidelines, but you have to be strong enough to be able to set those boundaries. And so doing the research and talking to people and getting support and getting some of these questions answered, you think about it and you're like, maybe I'm not strong enough to do this right now. I'm not going to be able to ask him to get a sponsor. I'm not going to be able to do this, that, and the other, whatever it is. But guess what I can do? can I ask him, is it possible to ask him to maybe look into it? Or, is it possible for me to say, how about you start going to one meeting a week? I don't know, like maybe start thinking these things
Yeah.
and talking about it with like another, with a group of, an Al-Anon or, some other moms.
One other, so we want to get to Lori's question in the chat because it's a great question. But Jackie, also, we have still to this day our own sponsors, and I can't emphasize enough. I know Aubrey's been a sponsor as well and has a sponsor, to find one through an Al-Anon program for yourself.
Yeah.
Because there's no like quick answer to this question for you. This is something you're gonna like need a lot of, like, it's really pivotal to get stronger and strong. The stronger you get in your household, you become a lighthouse for your son. So where you're starting with this question is that you're heading in the right direction, but I would say try to find a sponsor for yourself if you don't already have one, because that will change the dynamic a lot.
Yeah.
So can I just read Lori's question?
Yeah, but
How
I
did
want to respond one more thing to Jackie's question too. The other key thing is coming up with a plan, and Kiernan and Jackie really, they had a plan in place, and everybody's plan is different depending on their situation, what their resources are, where they're located. So like working not only with a sponsor, like they're saying, and picking those small steps to boundary up what you can in your house to do the parent driven recovery, but also working with a counselor like we have in Cornerstone, and they are available online too. I am biased when it comes to Joe and Kirk because they understand it and they just have this tremendous amount of experience, but working with them and then coming up with a plan that fits your family, because it looks different for everybody, it would be key too. And taking the time to do that and know that you don't have to do it like today, like right this second, but just having those conversations with your healthy peers and a professional that understands too. So yeah, go ahead, Kiernan, with the questions.
So I'll read the question, but I think you'd be great to answer this. How did you help your other children understand and cope with the situation, especially the boundary of saying your son has to abide by the rules or be kicked out? My non-addicted son is starting to have.
So what we did was we didn't, from the beginning, when things went south, and obviously they realized their brother wasn't here anymore, we sat down and told them that it was hard, but that we told them what had happened, and that we could still love Pat, we could still love our son. We could, if they were angry or upset about what was going on, that, he had a disease, and that they could choose to be angry with the disease, not with him, that he is still our son and still his brother, and he would never want to hurt them like this, and that we were seeking help. Once we got help and we were healthier, we were able to use the same boundaries and all the same information we were learning for our son. We started to use the same techniques or the same, talk with our daughters. So we were always honest. Now, our youngest daughter at the time was, how old was she? 6 years old. And she had written a letter to him when he was in rehab, and it was the hardest letter. I mean, it was like two or three sentences, but it was the most honest letter. And
sorry to interrupt, but the letter was not to him.
No,
the letter was written to addiction.
Yeah.
And so that's very, very important that the other siblings learn to depersonalize and understand that their sibling has an affliction, a disease.
Yeah.
And so to direct their anger towards the disease, not to their sibling.
Yeah, not to the sibling. So we started using boundaries, shots, and consequences, and we used them with all of them because we want the same things, and we kept it pretty simple. What were the three? They're still on the wall. I'm not good with my memory.
Be honest, be respectful for the girls,
and sobriety was also so and there were different things that we could do. So for my my son, obviously he would be what the shot was that we were calling on him for disrespect or for whatever it was. And with our daughters, we did the same thing. So we didn't single him out. We used the same thing. So I would say, and at the time we also had a lot of Cornerstone kids that were coming to our home. So instead of just saying our son's name, it would be like, you know, boys and girls at the bottom. And then we had it all divided up into three columns, very simple. So, and then we would decide, you know, how far we wanted to go with a shot or a consequence. I don't know if that's answering.
Yeah.
So we were honest. All of them knew what was going on, and all of them understood that it was a disease and that it was not him, and that we were working really hard at helping, and that by being codependent and trying to fix things or do things for him, we were basically giving more fuel to the fire than allowing him to build up his self-esteem and be able to do things for himself, because most of these kids have issues with self-esteem. You know, they're not capable, and you're always doing stuff for them.
But you don't want to be in like denial around your other kids.
No,
like
they know more.
like you got to like be vulnerable with them to a certain extent. I mean, you got to show them that you have a plan, but you know, it's tough how to make my son understand that he has a problem. I mean, so this is tough. You know, Dr. Dunbar has this great thing about the cycle of addiction, and that's a resource maybe Aubrey can share, because in the beginning, when they're I forget what the first stage is, there's nothing you can do. Like there's very little. You can sort of leave literature hanging around, but you got to focus on yourself and getting strong enough where the cost and the benefit of getting high, because nobody, like Joe always taught us, nobody dies from addiction. They die from enablement. Mary has a question. Go for it.
So I have a question about treatment. We are in the process of trying to find treatment, like Medicaid, basically. And it's tough finding help, right? So we're kind of sitting with this thought of maybe going to like an Oxford house with outpatient help, just kind of trying to get your guys' ideas on that.
Yeah, I think what happens, so any kind of help is great right now. So if you're willing to do that and you can send him to outpatient, that's great. The path is going to reveal itself. So if you're like happy, I'm not happy. If he's receiving treatment and it's working, then great. If he's receiving treatment and it's not working, he's not cooperating, then you'll realize outpatient is not the not the path that you need to take. You're going to have to up the level of care. Every decision, like, have a backup plan for what happens if that no longer works. Then what? And so while he's maybe an outpatient, start seeking an inpatient program so that you have that in your pocket. Kind of like what we did when he finally came home. We were like, okay, we're not going to play with this. We're just putting him. You've been gone for 7 weeks. You don't need outpatient. You need some serious care.
Yeah, part of the reality is we spent a shitload of money that we did not have, and we put it on credit card and we just prayed and turned it over to God. And that's the truth. Like, I did not know how I was going to pay for his treatment, but I also knew that I was saving his life, and I wasn't going to shortchange a chance to save my son's life. So it came down to a choice between not knowing financially how this was ever going to work and giving my son like the best treatment that he needed from what the counselors were telling me. And I had to have faith. I didn't know how it was going to work. I did not know how I was going to afford the money that we spent on recovery. I'm still paying it back. But working the steps taught me to let go, and I was limiting my thought process because I'm human, but God had a bigger plan. And so you gotta like get real about your own recovery, because the money issues with recovery will derail your own recovery. And you got to work hard on yourself in order to like, because that's one of the hardest parts is like, how do you pay for this?
Sending, it's not like it is in the movies where you send a child away and then they come back and they're better. Like, you're still thinking and doing the same things you were doing when he or she was using in your home,
Yeah.
or when they gave you attitude. And so, and like I said, we're very codependent. So it's very easy for all the old habits to come right back when the situation at home is exactly the way it was before the child left, or the grown-up, however old they are. It doesn't matter. If you have the same situation at home, it's going to be the same situation. It's going to go right back to the way it was. So that's why I emphasize, it's great to get your child into a safe place where they're getting help. But the second you can breathe or you have a moment, you have to focus on yourself. And it is not comfortable. And like I said, I was the one who was dead against it. I was not interested. It was not going to happen to me, but I had to do it to help him. I had to help myself first. It's just like the airplane, the oxygen mask analogy. You have to put the mask on yourself first before you can help somebody else. So don't, otherwise you'll be undoing anything that rehab did.
Yeah. Our son did 14 months of outpatient after he got out of rehab. So outpatient's 4 days a week. I mean, that's like, it was like about $2,000 a month. So it's not cheap.
And I'm not sure.
And I didn't know how,
Medicaid.
and I was unemployed.
Yeah.
So, and no, that was not covered by Medicaid.
Yeah.
It's Mary, it's tough. It is tough, but you got to look at it from the perspective of, this is a short window of time for the rest of their life and the rest of our life.
Yeah.
And you kind of want to like,
The younger, the better.
pour as many
Yeah.
resources as you can while they're young, while you have some control. Because then when they get into their 20s, they can do whatever they want.
Right. In their 20s, you can get them, obviously they can get help also, but you still have to work on yourself. And then you still have to learn about boundaries and how to, have that person living at home with you who sometimes, isn't your son or your daughter. Sometimes they're the addict, and you have to be able to know the difference and be able to respond to them with putting your emotions aside, so that they respect you. At one point I thought, I don't even care if my son loves me or not. I just want him to respect me. It had nothing to do with love. And, love is there now, but I didn't feel like it was there in his actions a long time ago.
My problem was that the adults around us did not believe it. And he could put on a normal face enough that no one believed that he was using. None of the people that would have been maybe my support. So I had really no support in it. Relatives didn't want to.
Johanna,
Yeah.
the more we spend around recovery, the more stories and friendships and relationships we build. And so you just become really aware of how, unfortunately, how common this is. How many people whose stories are similar to yours that I know. One in particular who lost their son in their house, and at the same time, I've seen the healing and the hope that comes from all of these people when they keep working their program, and that's why it's like there's always hope for you. Like there is. What I learned is that suffering and joy are not incompatible. They're not contradictory. And so want to make sure, so I pray for you, that you have joy, that you experience serenity and joy in your life and peace.
Thank you.
Because I learned that I was not going to experience peace when things got better. Things were going to get better for me when I started to experience peace. That was like the number one lesson I've learned in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So
Um,
I'm sorry
well,
for your loss.
even therapists would take the position that there was something wrong with me and my parenting, and that made it even harder because that gave him
Yeah.
fuel to
Yeah.
fight, to not cooperate.
Yep.
We are up against a disease of denial, of
Yeah.
lack of information. And that's why these groups are so important. So Joanna, thank you so much for sharing from your heart, and our deepest
Yep.
condolences to you. And thank you for sharing. And we relate. It's
Yep.
really hard when even medical professionals aren't believing what's happening. So my heart goes out to you.
Yep. So Denise has a great question, Aubrey. Aubrey, you might know, like, you might have a better idea because you kind of like do the online thing, and we've been national, and like, so Denise wants to know, is it better to have a sponsor that is local? And I would say yes, all things being equal. But initially, what I needed to learn is like, you just needed to get a sponsor and not endlessly try to like evaluate who the best sponsor was, because you can always change your sponsor.
Yeah.
And get new ones. It's like part of the culture of recovery. So just get a sponsor, and then, God will provide the right sponsor for you in his own time.
Is this through
Trust that.
AA that you get a
I
sponsor?
mean, if you're dealing with a loved one who's got the addiction, then it would be more like Al-Anon for yourself.
And the programs that we have are the Every Brain Matters Climbers group. So you can find a sponsor through them, or
Yep.
Mar-Anon too. And I've recruited a lot of Cornerstone recovery
Yep.
parents from there. I'm always
Yep.
hounding them saying, can I put you on the list? Because I've known these parents for years. I've watched them work a really strong program, and I know
Yep.
they know the tools of recovery, and I know their experience, strength, and hope will benefit so many people. So that's what we're trying to build the Mar-Anon community with, because Mar-Anon is fairly new. So, and we recognize, especially in Cornerstone, that other communities don't necessarily have what we were given in Cornerstone. So
Mhm.
we're trying to spread that to other communities. And that's one of the main reasons why I developed Every Brain Matters, because I recognize people don't know this.
Yeah.
When I talk to people all over the country, they're like, what are you talking about? Tools of recovery, parent driven recovery. So we'll keep raising the conversation, but contact me, or continue to go to Mar-Anon or Al-Anon and find a sponsor that works for you. And like Kiernan said, you can always change later. Go
I have a
ahead.
comment.
Yes.
Hi,
Yes.
I'm Christy, and
Hey.
I just really enjoyed listening to you today. It's a reminder for me to get back into work my program in Al-Anon, because my person was not a child, although I think one of my grown children has a problem with marijuana. But what led me into getting help was my husband, who had smoked since he was 14, and he's now 64. And just to see the very horrible progression of that disease, that he wasn't one of the ones that got recovered. And he's losing his marriage over it right now, and still is saying that it's not a problem. And it's just so, I just saying it's a wily disease. It really is. And not only now is it not his problem, but it's progressed to where he's saying it's my problem, because I can't just stay married to him and put up with his smoking anymore, which, I did for over 30 years, actually. So
Yeah.
anyway,
It's a family disease.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here, and I'm just kind of feeling sad still, because, I always had that kind of Cinderella thing where if I just do this or I just do that, or I love him enough or do these things, and, you know, then he's going to feel fulfilled and loved, and he's not going to need this drug anymore. And so I guess I'm just saying that because my sadness is still there. And, you know, sometimes it just, you know, maybe it's not ever going to go away, but the programs that are out there really, really help. And just, you know, you just got to keep going, working on yourself. That's it. And it's not like a miracle or anything, but
Thank you
do
for sharing that.
have to go. Yeah. Thank you so much for
Yeah, I was gonna
you
say,
guys
thank you for
being on
sharing that,
here.
because when you say things out loud like that, it takes the power away from them. So you kind
Yeah.
of hear what you're saying out loud, you know that it's not okay. And
Right.
just, you know, think about doing something about it for yourself, because you
Mhm.
deserve, you know, not to feel that
Mhm.
way. So you'll get some tools for yourself so that you can get out of your head and not
Yeah.
believe what you're hearing.
Right.
And grief is not just for when someone dies. Like, so all of us are going through the grieving process. And if we stifle it, we'll never like work through it. So acceptance of what we're experiencing as a grieving process is like the first step to get healing. And it's not fun, but it is part of getting stronger.
Right. Right. I know that. Thank you so much.
And
Thank you.
we have an adult qualifier meeting in Mar-Anon on Wednesday evenings. And I just want you to know that I relate, because my qualifier is my husband and my son. And it destroyed my marriage too. So I want you to know my heart goes out to you, and I understand exactly how you feel. And the grief is real, and it's okay to be sad. It's okay to feel.
Oh,
That-
thank you
that-
so much.
That actually leads me into the question I had, but I want to get to Mike and Maria too, because I think they want to ask a question. So I'll ask my question after Mike and Maria.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Jackie and Kiernan. This was extremely beneficial for us. And you shared a lot of experience, and your strength has been very motivating for me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear it.
Okay, here comes my question. We were talking about grief and sadness, and there was a particular meeting. I mean, I grieved so hard when my son broke off our relationship after, you know, and he went and relapsed after being 3 years sober and working in a strong recovery program the whole time. And I was in a meeting with Jackie and Kiernan, and I was really having a hard time. I was really beating myself up, you know, thinking I was this terrible mother, that I've screwed everything up, and I was really low. And then Jackie chimed in and said, you need a God. Oh, because I was asking, do I send them a Christmas present? Do I send them a birthday present? And Kiernan's like, Aubrey, you know the answer to that. And then
Yes.
and then
perfect.
Jackie said, this is what you need. Do you remember that moment, Jackie? What you said to me that day?
Write a letter.
And then put it in
God
my,
box.
yes. Could you
Yeah, we
explain
have
what
them
a
right
God,
here.
can you explain what a God box is?
It looks like that. Well, it's probably backwards
That's
right
mine.
now. Yeah. So it's just like a shoebox. And this one's decorated because my teenage daughter did this for Kiernan. And, you know, when you're having those moments, you can write it down and stick it in your box and give it to God.
That's been a powerful tool in my life. Because I want to
Yeah, use the God box.
because I wanted to contact my son constantly, which is the wrong thing to do, right? That's not respecting his space and not respecting his boundaries. So instead of that anxious energy, that codependency that I was living in so severely, I could write it down and put it there, give it to God.
Give it to God. He'll take care of it.
And I knew it, but I had forgot about it because I was so sad and I was so in my head, and I needed the power of the group. I needed somebody to speak to me at that moment, and it happened, and I'm so grateful.
And it always happens, right?
It always
You
happens.
always hear what you need to hear. God gives us what we need. He gives us what we need.
That's why going to meetings is like exercising, you know,
Yeah.
it's something I've got to do to stay healthy myself.
So am I hearing no birthday presents?
Yes.
I
And
don't.
that's,
You
Go ahead,
don't give them
Yeah, I
birthday.
mean, look, it comes down to this, like, if your kid doesn't want to be a part of your life, you got to detach. Like, learning to detach with love and move on is it's a hard lesson, but it's like the ultimate codependency is constantly like your happiness depends on what your kids do. And also I learned, like, it was a burden to place on my kid that their behavior determined whether I was happy or not. And if you think about that, like, that's actually not fair to our kids. Like, I'm not happy because you're using and you're not talking to me and you've moved out and you won't take my calls. Like, no, go be happy, right? Why should your kid be responsible for your happiness? That's not fair. So, like, learn to be happy by yourself, regardless of whether, like, someone's like taking your call or using or sober or not. Like, it's just when you think about it, it's like, oh, it is kind of ridiculous that I need my kid to make me happy. What does that say to your kid? Right? I don't want that burden,
Yeah.
So Aubrey's, by the way, like, she leads by example, and like relentless tenacity to constantly show up and be vulnerable and expose herself to the group and be open to receiving help and constantly learning and getting stronger and stronger. So I can't tell you, because I've seen her day in and day out for years, to tell you, like, and her other son has been a big part of my son's recovery. They're very tight, and they may not see each other for weeks or months. And then when they see each other, it's like the connection is so instantaneous. It's one of the most beautiful things to see, that bond that these kids develop with each other. And I hope that, you guys can experience what that's like. I know you're not, you don't have Cornerstone, but Aubrey leads by example is my point.
yeah, I was just gonna say about the birthday present, like, I'm not sure like where you are in recovery or what's going on at home, but sometimes, unintentionally, our kids are entitled, teenagers and, even adult children are entitled and they want what they want. And like I said, I'm not sure where you are in your recovery with that child, if they're respecting your boundaries or not, if you're just not even there yet, and as a mom, I could totally see myself in the past thinking, oh my God, it's his birthday, I'm going to go out and get him something, or, take him out to dinner or whatever. But I would, you could just say, happy birthday, I love you. You don't have to buy him anything. You don't have to give him a gift, especially if you're about to embark in rehab or helping him with recovery, and that's pretty expensive. And don't worry about, how he or she is going to react when they don't get the expensive iPhone or whatever it is that they're normally, or they're used to getting. Stop feeding the entitlement and show them, in your actions, that you are the lighthouse and you're going to help them get better. And it's not going to be. So I know, I know my son is healthy right now, because he is connected with his siblings, and he's connected with us, and he's respectful, and he's involved. He still lives at home. He's, how old is he? 19 years old. And he works, he has a job, he pays rent. So he pays for his expenses, and he goes to church with us on Sundays, and we have dinner together. And he's working with a sponsor. He still works step work and meets with his sponsor. And we still require him to go to 3 AA meetings a week, and a family night. I guess that's when he gets together with his sponsor and his sponsees. He asked recently if he could go to coffee and hang out with the other kids from the group he was in. And I'm trying to think of like what else.
Joe, the Cornerstone
Yeah.
counselor, for permission. I think we get, I mean, I have very close.
And we randomly test too. We also
Yeah.
randomly test. So we don't let him know when we're going to test. We just test him. And he's 19 years old. If he doesn't want to pee in the cup, and he's not 130 something pounds anymore, he's heavier now. So, and he has failed a drug test before. It was for alcohol, I think. We kind of knew it was happening when it happened, so we caught it. But you know, if he does not want to pee in the cup, and I'm standing in the doorway, just FYI, it's not like it was before where he could like dilute it or do something, or I would give him some respect by letting him close the door, stupid stuff. I don't do that. I stand in the doorway and he turns around and there's nothing, forget about being embarrassed. That's all gone. That all went away a long time ago. And he just pees in the cup and I test him and, you know, it's negative. So, but in his actions, I know he loves me in his actions now. And I know he respects us in his actions because he wants to be a part of the family. So he stays sober and he's respectful of everyone. So he's a different person than the one he was. But it wasn't always like that. It took 3 years of doing the same thing over and over and saying no when I wanted to say yes.
Yeah, I guess it sounds a little counterintuitive, but it's not our job to keep our son sober. It's his job. And our job is to make sure that he's working his plan. And if he doesn't, to hold him accountable, which is like Jackie said, he's very connected. He's living his own life in his own way. I give him, space for adulting. If he doesn't want to do college, that's okay. He's got to acquire a marketable skill. But, I'm just letting, there's some conditions he has to meet to live at home, wants to. So he's happy to meet those conditions. And that makes me happy. We love doing golf together once a month with the Cornerstone kids, and just goofing off and going to church and eating anything. Like he's a real part of the family, and that's a real joy. So, I mean, it's a big change from 3 years ago. Bye, Johanna. God bless you.
No, I'm not going by. I'm just raising my hand here.
Stephanie, sorry.
I have
Yes.
two suggestions or two things that work for me. I really would not have thought of online counseling being helpful, but it's actually been extremely helpful. And the other thing is with birthday presents, I have a daughter who wasn't addicted, but she no longer speaks to me. And I've even had the experience of sending her stuff and she sent it back. So what I frequently do is on her birthday, I will send a donation to some organization, the Sierra Club, or maybe a church, or someone working with prisoners. That way she knows, and I know that I still love her very much. And maybe someday it'll matter to her, but it matters to me to be able to recognize her birthday.
That's a good suggestion,
Yep.
Joanna. Thank you.
Love it.
I think we're going to officially end the meeting
Okay.
now. We're 30 minutes over. So we can be mindful of Jackie and Kiernan's time and all your time, just from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. I love you guys to pieces. I miss you.
Me too.
And
Love you,
I'm
Aubrey.
jealous my son lives right down the street from you. And
And I love him.
I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in November. And thank you, everybody who came and joined us tonight. This will be, this is recorded, so I will be uploading it within a week or two. And come back again, because we got a lot of experience, strength, and hope coming, so we can develop our tools and our connection to take care of ourselves. So thank you so very
Good night,
much.
guys.
Thanks,
Love you
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
It's been awesome.
Thanks.